Yes.
Even if she's asking questions.
Okay. And this, do I have to hold close or does it matter?
Below is okay.
You're asking me questions.
Yes.
Can you sit up?
Here?
Yeah, your voice will be good.
No, here also it's good.
It's
Yesterday we
good.
did it. Great. John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Dapper?
Sure. I've spent the last, I'd say, 13 years, 14 years developing websites and web applications. And as such, I've sort of been passionate about the web for a very long time. My role at Dapper is as co-founder and CTO to sort of help with my co-founder lead the vision of the company, implement our vision, and sort of bring the web and web services to the table there.
So John, the history of the semantic web goes back several years now. What has been achieved thus far? Where are we now and where are we going?
So I think that the semantic web, despite its promise for over 10 years, hasn't really come to pass so much because of the difficulties in getting people to implement it. Effectively, there's a lack of economic incentives to sort of implement semantically compliant versions of websites. So where we are today effectively is that people have a great need for the promise offered by the semantic web, but it hasn't come to pass. And so a number of companies and developers and individuals are trying to make it happen sort of from a different perspective, from a different angle. And they are implementing practical techniques which allow them to sort of circumvent the need for all of the structure dictated by the semantic web. It still allows us to realize its potential. Where we're going is that we're going to probably see more and more of this as sort of the web needs to evolve and as users are demanding the kinds of things that would be offered by the semantic web, we're going to see those things start to come to pass as people make it happen.
So John, according to you, why have visionaries like Tim Berners-Lee failed to anticipate the current messy state of the web?
I think the web evolved in such a way that was intended to reduce barriers to getting things off the ground. And in fact, that's probably what's probably one of the biggest factors for its success. Specifically, when people implement websites, there's no requirement from the browsers that the websites be implemented correctly. And this has led to at least HTML being more or less a mess. But it's this low barrier approach that has made it possible for almost anyone to create websites and for there to be authoring tools that allow non-developers to create websites. And so I'm not even sure that they failed to anticipate it, although I don't think that anyone anticipated it to take off in such a way. I think that the framers of the web probably knew that it was imperfect, but I don't think that anybody saw it becoming as vast and massive as it is today. And had they may have imposed more rigorous standards for the development, and maybe we'd be in a different state than we are today. Although at the same time, we probably wouldn't have developed as quickly.
Right. So what, according to you, John, is a practical semantic web? Can you elucidate on the top-down approach that transforms today's existing web into semantic web?
Yeah, sure. So the practical semantic web is, in contrast to sort of the semantic web envisioned in academic laboratories, which states that you have to have very, very tight rules over how semantic relationships are expressed, how data is expressed, and so on. The top-down approach says we have a specific need here. We want to improve the way people navigate, for instance, around the web. And so we'll find a solution to this using the existing web. So the practical semantic web is sort of a next step evolution from the existing web. It says, let's use the technologies that are low barrier, that are easy to adopt, that already exist, and we'll take those, apply them to the existing web in order to get ourselves a new semantic web. And so a variety of companies are doing a whole number of different things, whether it be allowing people to mix up and mash up data within their browser, or if they're offering tools that you can just embed code into your website and it will create semantic relationships for you. And so all of these different approaches combined are leading us towards where the semantic web was promising to take us.
So what promise does such a top-down approach hold in fields such as semantic search?
Okay, so semantic search is probably the holy grail of the semantic web effort. Really, I think that users on the web are in search of information, right? Everyone has a goal on the web, whether it's for recreation or if it's for work. Typically, people are looking for information. And while the process of finding that information has gotten better over the years, it's still far from ideal. Many times information is buried, it's inaccessible, there's hundreds of millions of websites, and there's really no effective way to organize all that information today. The current search engines do a nice job, and they're getting better and better all the time, but I think that the semantic web holds the promise that being able to locate information, find relevant information, aggregate information into a single location, that will get much, much easier as the semantic web sort of comes into existence. And at the end of the day, it becomes an issue of productivity, it becomes an issue of access to knowledge and information. So in as much as the web has opened up the world and opened up access for everyone to learn and gain access and do the things they need to do, the semantic web will make that process more efficient and more enjoyable and much easier.
It's very interesting to look forward to. So semantically enabled SOAs require the ability to express business concepts in the language of the implementation technologies in ways that are accessible to the non-technical stakeholders.
Sure.
This is a rather hard challenge to meet. So how are the web and its semantic-oriented technologies continuing to prove themselves in meeting this challenge?
I think one of the biggest things that the semantic web may give us is that when you have structured and semantic access to content on the web, it allows you to build tools that interact with that content in a generic way. So, for example, if you can access any website semantically, one could build a application that allows you to access specific types of data. So somebody can come out and say, well, we have this great idea for an interface that lets you achieve this specific business purpose. In order to do that, they need to gain access to all sorts of information. Without semantic and structured access, it becomes very difficult. So basically what I'm saying is that if you can build these kinds of applications for people who are not necessarily technical or not necessarily developers, and you can give them access to the information they need such that they don't have to be developers to get that information, then you've reached this point where you can enable all sorts of people to do things that currently only programmers can do.
So how can the semantic web be harnessed, say, in the field of advertising? Maybe talk a bit about Mashup Ads. Okay,
so Mashup Ads is a platform and a semantic ad network, effectively, that Dapper is building on top of the Dapper platform. Dapper, is sort of important to understand what its core abilities are. It allows you to create an XML feed, a semantic API for any website. Once you have this ability, our vision really is to allow content to become truly portable on the web, which means that you as a user are going around the web looking for information. Now, it may be that some of the information you need is on one site and some of the information you need is on another site. And you as the user are left to sort of do your own bidding. You have to go around and figure out where the information is and what it is. At the same time, it would behoove you and also those websites that you're looking at, they could deliver the information you need in a single place. So let's take, for example, a site that lists events, right? So you might go there and you're searching for conferences in your area or maybe somewhere anywhere in the world that are of interest to you. And then, your next logical step after you find an event that's of interest is to find a flight and a hotel for the dates and the city that you need. And today, the kind of advertising you might see on an event website for travel would be, come and book your reservations at thebesttravelagency.com. But imagine that thebesttravelagency.com could very simply embed within whatever event you're looking at flights and hotels that would get you to that event and would provide for accommodation at that event. Now, this becomes a scaling problem, right? Because this particular travel agency can't do integration projects with every single event website and publisher. So what they do today is they buy ads, and this is a relatively easy process for them. They design an ad and they put it out on the web. Now, if they could harness their content in a way that was easy as creating an ad, then what you'd end up with is a situation where the scenario that I posed would be completely possible. You have your content fully integrated with the content of another website, and you can sort of set it up through the existing ad networks. And that's the concept of mashup ads. Mashup ads take the content of the publisher's website and the content of the advertiser's website and combine them inside the ad. And as time goes on, I imagine that these ads will also become more fluid and more integrated into the publisher's interface, such as to give the user the experience of a feature and not an advertisement. At the end of the day, users don't like advertising, but advertising doesn't have to be a dirty word. It is only so because today 99% of ads are irrelevant, obnoxious, intrusive, and you see it. Publishers push the ads to the top and to the side and away from their content. They still need to put them there to make money, yet at the same time they're aware that their users are not particularly fond of them. Imagine a scenario in which an ad was highly useful to you. At that point you stop caring that it's an ad. It just becomes a feature of the website that you're using. And so this, I think, is a real promise of semantics and feeds for the field of advertising. To get to the point where content on the web is truly fluid, moves between sites, is paid for by the people who get something back from their content being exposed, and gives you as the user the best possible experience. At the end of the day, everyone wins, because the advertiser gets his traffic and his recognition, the publisher gets his economic incentive, his financial compensation, and the user is given something that's valuable and costs him nothing.
And the web becomes a much better place. Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah. So John, please tell us our readers a bit about Dapper's new server-side mashup framework.
So the mashup framework, which we call, sometimes we call the mashup data server, sometimes we call the Dapper feed services, is, as you indicate, a server-side engine for executing mashup patterns and logic. This product is somewhat in its infancy, at least in terms of its documentation and exposure on the web, although we're very happy to give anyone who's interested access. We actually use this back-end mashup data engine to power mashup ads, which we were just talking about. This engine allows you to execute common logic patterns. Let's say, for instance, and let's take the event example. Right? You might have a mashup configuration that says, when you're running on events.com, use a certain feed to extract the city and dates of whatever event the user is looking at. Then take that output and provide it as input to the besttravelsite.com's feed, bring back hotels for that date, for that city, and then render them inside the ad. So the mashup data server is an engine that delivers you one unified feed that has combined content from two or more sources in some interesting and meaningful way according to the logic patterns that you dictate.
So with Web 3.0, pegged as the next phase of internet evolution, what is your outlook, John, in terms of market directions, likely developments, with this impending paradigm shift from, like we said earlier, information-centric to knowledge-centric patterns of computing?
I think that as these technologies sort of become more readily accessible and sort of enter the mainstream more, we're going to see a lot of companies and developers, individual developers, seizing the opportunity. I think that we should be really excited because really the promise of having structured access, the promise of Web 3.0 is that everything sort of becomes possible when it comes to content on the web. And you're no longer living in a walled garden. And I think it's really hard to predict what we'll see because at the end of the day, and this was part of our vision for Dapper, is that you end up allowing the world to realize its own creativity. The boundaries become sort of pushed out in the sense that now that people don't have to worry so much and don't have to think so much about how the content is obtained, they're actually able to say, well, I have this really cool idea and I'm going to implement it. So the limits of what we're going to see are only bounded by what people can think of to do with content. So as far as, all sorts of things, we're going to see improvements to navigation on the web. We'll see improvements in search. We'll see improvements in advertising. I think that that'll all be powered by Dapper. And we'll see a whole variety of things that we never really conceived would be possible from our existing web. And it's something to be excited about.
Okay, so are there any next generation semantic development tools that our viewers should be aware of and should consider in their upcoming projects?
Well, we certainly like to promote Dapper. Dapper really comes into play when you need to have a feed for an existing site that doesn't provide one or whose feed doesn't provide what you need. In fact, many people have told us they use Dapper to create feeds for sites that already have them but don't do what it is that they need or isn't fast enough or whatever. In the mashup ecospace, and they call it mashup, but mashup is really sort of a part of the semantic web, and it's, I think, the first part that we've really seen is a rich space, right? And as far as developers are concerned, they're fortunate because the last 2 years have really seen the rise of many tools and platforms that provide them with the ability to do things that are otherwise very difficult. And these include Yahoo Pipes and Microsoft Popfly. These include Intel's MashMaker, Orchestrate, and these are tools that people can use in order to make new creations. There's some other ones that are coming out soon. It's a space that is, while it's very hot and there's a lot of activity, one of the nicest things that I think we've seen so far is that many, if not all, of these tools are complementary as opposed to competitive. They interoperate very nicely because when you speak on the level of feeds, feeds are, one tool can output a feed and another tool can consume that feed. And so each tool brings to the table its own power. So certainly it's worth investigating all those things that are out there, not those that I just mentioned. I don't know that it's really been framed in any particular cohesive way. You won't necessarily find a listing of semantic web tools, right? Not everybody builds themselves that way. I don't think Yahoo Pipes has been billed as a semantic tool or a semantic application. It's, meant for doing for feeds what the Unix system pipe has done for, systems programming. And so finding it can be a little difficult, but really anything that works on the level of feeds is probably something that's worth checking out at this point. Whether those be development tools or end user tools, all of those things provide insight into what's possible today.
From your interactions, John, with the Indian developer ecosystem, what role do you foresee for markets such as India and China in this ongoing semantic web wave?
I think that from my own exposure and from what I've read and what I've seen, both of these two countries, India and China, have massive developer bases. Huge groups of developers who are all very intelligent and, what's more, eager to adopt new technologies. And so I think what we'll see on the semantic web side is a lot of innovative technologies coming out of India and out of China. And many of them will be around the semantic web. It's a matter of sort of, again, creativity, and creativity comes from all over the world, and we see it, in Europe and the United States. We see it in Asia, and I think that the role that India can really play in all of this is to sort of remember that it's all about ideas, right? It's all about creativity. Harness the tools that exist, create the tools that don't exist. There's no need to sit around and wait for something to happen. Create it for yourself. It's all within our power. This is our web, and we build it together. And I think that we've seen from what's come out of India so far that the promise is huge. So I encourage all the developers in India to pursue the dream of the semantic web and help the world make it happen and be pioneers in the space. Because I think they totally have the potential and the capabilities to do this.
Thank you, John, for your I thought it was a very interesting note to conclude on, and I must say it was very great to be speaking with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been an honor. Thank you.